Did you know that land and property disputes add up to 65% of all civil litigations in India? In this episode of Let's Get Real, we are breaking down the 5 most common property fights in India, the ones that clog our courts and can make your life miserable. And we also get you some experienced voices on how to avoid them. Let's begin. Inheritance and succession disputes. Now, this is the #1 cause of property fights. Think about it. How many families do you know personally where siblings are still battling over who gets what? And it doesn't matter if the family is rich or not rich. Property disputes after someone's death can get ugly and drag for decades, especially so if there is no registered will. Even if there is a will, it can be contested. Number 2, co-owned property and partition disputes. Now, when multiple people own a property, disagreements are inevitable. Who uses it? Who maintains it? What is the right sale value? This could even be a husband and wife fighting over property in a divorce case, or several cousins inheriting one property but they can't agree on how to split it or sell it. The next big reason for property disputes are fraudulent titles. Now, this one's a minefield. India's land records, though increasingly getting digitized, are not foolproof. Have you seen that Bollywood film Kagaz, made in 2021, where Pankaj Tripathi is Lal Bihari Mritak, a man officially declared dead in land records while he was very much alive? Now, the movie is based on a true story. The bitter truth? Even with digitization, land records are vulnerable to bribery and manipulation. Names can get altered, and so often buyers discover the seller wasn't the rightful owner. Worse, the same property is sometimes sold to multiple people. Now for the area which is painfully common in Indian cities, the builder-buyer disputes. Buyers book apartments, pay EMIs for years, but project completion is delayed due to approval delays, mismanagement, lack of funds. There are also disputes over not giving home buyers the amenities and specs as promised in the brochure or at the time of sale. Now, RERA offices are flooded with these cases. And last but not the least, boundary disputes and encroachment. Neighbors fighting over a wall or a few feet of land, or someone building a room that spills onto your balcony, which then cuts off your light and ventilation. A friend of mine living in a posh South Delhi gated community could not get her neighbor to remove an unauthorized extension that was blocking the exit at the back of her house. Now, RWA, police all refused to intervene, and other than a prolonged court battle, she had no other option. So there you have it, the 5 big fights in Indian real estate: inheritance, co-owned property, title fraud, builder-buyer disputes, boundaries and encroachment. Have I missed any? Well, you can comment below and let me know if I have. We also have 2 special guests on how one can avoid these property disputes, if at all. Joining me are Roongta, seasoned financial advisor and the founder of Fee-Only Investment Advisors. We also have a sharp legal mind with us, Parikh, partner at Khaitan & Co. Gentlemen, so glad to have you with me today. All right, let me start with the first area of dispute, the inheritance dispute. Roongta, are people really getting over their reluctance of making a will?
So I think 2 things here. One, are people now more open to writing wills? Yes, they clearly are. I think there is a lot of consciousness about writing wills. But the second bigger thing, wills are not going to solve disputes. The manner in which wills are sort of used in India, or the way in which they need to be certified by the court, and you need a letter of administration or a probate. Uh, the the process, again, as I said, is a punishment. If there is no dispute, then of course the will is the easiest, but then even without a will, it does not take that much time. We have seen cases where it says that the will is forged even though it's a registered will, and yes, eventually it will be proven it is not forged. Everything will happen, but it will take years.
Parikh, would you agree with Mr. Roongta on the fact that a will is not a foolproof way to avoid succession and inheritance property disputes?
Yes, so making a will is of course necessity, and there is social reluctance because of our own cultural, aspects of how we Indians think. However, it is one of the most critical things to make a will, but making a will does not avoid any future disputes. It still is disputable. People have a myth that by registering a will or video recording a will, any future disputes are put to rest, but that's not the case. If there are more than one, sort of beneficiaries, then it is bound that they may dispute the will if one person's got lesser than the other.
Okay, so then tell us, how do you make the system foolproof to avoid such disputes?
In order to avoid any inheritance disputes post someone's death, it's most ideal to either create some sort of a private trust. What we mean by a private trust is you don't have to register that trust with any authority. It's just a simple document which shows that you have bifurcated the asset in different ways with different, with your children, be it your daughter, your son, and you have trustees to take care of those while you are alive. You have corporate trustees. You could entrust that to any of your close relatives who could hold it in trust for you till the time you are alive. And then once you are not alive, that the trust would distribute the assets to the beneficiaries, be it your children, and in the manner that you've written the trust. Honestly, it is not that the trust structure is only for HNIs or UHNIs. It even works for a middle class family if they want to avoid any future disputes between their families. And it is a very simple sort of a transaction structure that can be followed. It does not have multiple complex issues surrounding it.
Move on to the next one, which is co-owned property and the increasing trend of divorces. Roongta, this one is for you. Is there a solution to resolve this more amicably between the spouses?
Again, Manisha, unfortunately, there is no way to safeguard against this because in India, the litigation process is the problem. So, uh, as you must be aware, one of the major reasons for defaults in home loans, okay, defaults are very, very low. But whatever defaults are there, a large part of those defaults are for two reasons. One is because somebody in the family, most likely the main wage earner, gets a critical illness that impacts the earning capability. That's one. The second major reason for default is separation, and if there is a loan, then now they are really, really fighting. But when a couple takes on a liability like this, it is time that they should evaluate, right? Whether taking on a joint liability makes sense. Uh, I don't think that really happens. I've seen couples get married and immediately move into, home with a loan. I think so. We just recently counseled about to be married couple, where this issue we brought out among other issues. That do you I mean, you're not even sure whether marriages, whether they will last, how long will they last, and do you really want to take on a joint liability like this?
Parikh, what's your view on avoiding legal tangles over co-owned property or co-inherited property, especially if, one person is ready to sell, the other doesn't want to?
In co-ownership, both are dependent on each other, whether one really likes it or not. If people are not at idem, the best way is that you have a independent valuer appointed, and if one person doesn't want to sell, he either buys the other person out, or by virtue of an independent valuer, you have a valuation mechanism which basically draws you to understand how much money one would get, so that there is no insecurities that one is losing out over the other. The other is also to file some sort of a suit before courts to have a sort of amicable settlement, if that is possible, before the court, or try mediation.
Let's address the area of fraudulent titles. Now, how do you ensure that you don't have a risk of title frauds? Because, a buyer almost always finds out after he or she has bought the land or bought that property.
I think Manisha, digitization is going to help a lot in terms of availability of information for each person. Presently, if I have to go and search for my own asset, it's a tedious task. You have to go to the sub-registrar, make physical searches. There are online records, but they are not as easily available. Yeah. So, Manisha, for a buyer, it's very, very important to follow a few steps. One of them is, of course, to undertake a very thorough title diligence. be it searching at the public records, which is the sub-register of assurances, to see what the chain of title is, to ensure they also issue sort of public notices to prove that they've taken all steps which a bona fide buyer can do to ensure that the person who he's buying from is the rightful owner, and that he really owns that asset, and it is not that there is some other person's right which is not being sort of bought in the transaction. So undertaking searches, checks of past chain of titles, inspecting the original documents which are available with the seller, making independent inquiries with the sub-register of assurances. These are some critical steps that each buyer must do to avoid any fraud.
Let's move on to what most people are buying, which is buying from a builder, right? There is this tendency in India, especially in good times when sales are really robust, people are just signing on the dotted line without even reading through the builder-buyer agreement. And of course, there are disputes over delayed possession and amenities not being given as promised. These continue to persist despite RERA being there. So what's your view? Has RERA really brought in any improvement at all, Mr. Parikh?
Yeah, I think the RERA has been a mode where transparency is sort of increased. Every information about the project is available on the RERA website. I feel again that buyers need to be more prudent into what they are buying into. They need to also go and check out these RERA websites. All information from their title, approval, status, how many apartments are sold, everything's available. So I think it's more for buyers also to ensure that they are well, kind of well read. They are aware of what they're getting into. And in terms of signing on the dotted line, I feel that there's ample opportunity for every buyer to go through their own agreements, take legal advice, and understand what they're signing up for. So therefore, I feel that buyers blaming developers may not be the right way. Today, from 2016 onwards, we've got RERA, which gives you all information at a click of a button, and I think that's something that each buyer must do rather than blaming the other, saying that we sort of signed on the dotted line.
Roongta, would you agree that post-RERA things have become better? What do you really advise your clients when it comes to buying a home?
This is a very major area, and you're absolutely right. RERA has brought in some sense of discipline. So the completely the hugely terrible kind of things have stopped happening, at least. But the delays continue, the not giving the promises continue. What do we advise? We tell our clients to completely avoid under construction property. Do not buy under construction. Okay. Yes, it may be a little more expensive, but it is expensive because the risk element has been taken away. When you are buying under construction, there is a huge risk even now with RERA also. And that is the reason it is little cheap. So what you get cheap, so-called cheap, is basically a risk element that is built in. People don't specify, the builders don't specify the parking numbers, and then you find parking is not in order, other amenities you have already mentioned. So buying something that's not ready, you're buying a promise. And developers promise, one takes with a pinch of salt.
Well, that's a good piece of advice, Roongta, but not always feasible for people who need that time horizon to make payments, and sometimes there's just not the right inventory available in a particular market. I'd rather say that, if you're buying into an under construction project, stick to branded and experienced builders who have long track record of delivery. Okay, Parikh, even after that, there are builder-buyer disputes which are happening. What should be the legal recourse? Is it always RERA first, or should the home buyer, or can he approach a consumer court or file a regular civil petition?
So I feel, I think, Manisha, given post RERA, the advent of RERA, developers have been very cognizant of what they promise. So there are some few stray cases now that, you'll have some smaller developer trying to do all of it. But our suggestion to any buyer that if they face something like this is, first and foremost, all options are open, right? They can approach RERA, they can even approach Consumer Forum, but they can't approach the High Court directly. They must go to RERA, because RERA, while the cases take some time, but there is definitely some orders being passed. Even if it's delayed, fair orders are being passed. And if you do not get an order with RERA, if something goes against you, you always can approach the RERA Appellate Tribunal and then the Bombay High Court.
Good advice there, Mr. Parikh. Finally, what's your quick view on encroachment disputes? Any way to prevent them?
Yeah. So I feel first and foremost, everyone needs to be prudent, how we kind of secure our own personal valuables. I think real estate also is something that needs to be thoroughly secured. Whether if it's an apartment, you have adequate security measures. Even if it's a land, you have, good fencing, walls, etc. done with security surveillance cameras, etc. installed, which will help. One thing for sure, that you have security agencies to protect your land. And in case if there's an encroachment, when you have to go and approach court to seek these encroachers out, you have enough and more evidence to prove that these lands were in your custody and someone's really come in and encroached land. So I feel, first, to begin with, it needs to be well secured. You need to invest in those sort of agencies and security surveillance aspects to ensure there's no encroachment. But if there is still an encroachment, these things will come into aid if you were to go to court as evidence to show that it was your land which has been encroached upon.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your advice. Appreciate your time. Well, I'm going to wrap out with few words of sound advice with what I've learned over several years of covering real estate. Number one, if you're buying an inherited or ancestral property, it's really important to do a full, thorough title search. You also need to ensure every legal heir has either signed off legally or relinquished their claim. Never rely only on what the seller is saying. The second one, take legal help to check your builder-buyer agreement or to verify ownership if buying land or an ancestral property. Now, your lawyer can do a comprehensive title research or search at the relevant land registry office and make sure that it's all kosher. Finally, stick with builders who have a solid track record of buying a property under construction, and read your builder-buyer agreements thoroughly before signing and handing over your check. Thanks for watching. Let's get real.